So we, through the RSVP form, had two major themes come out and what people wanted to discuss and hear more about. So we're really excited to have a bunch of experts from these different groups to introduce topics in those conversations. And then
my name is Dennis Nixon, and I'm based at the University of Rhode Island. I'm a professor there as well, but in this role, I'm the risk manager and legal advisor for UNOLS, which is the University National Oceanographic Laboratory System. So when the gradual shutting down of government operations began, we actually had vessels all over the world. And it was quite problematic to get the vessels and the crew home. Normally, as you might know, vessels don't return to port after a cruise. They'll stop in a place like Taipei and change out the science party. Maybe one or two crew members bring some new equipment aboard. But some of the places that we were stopping, the Endeavour, for example, had a stop scheduled in the Azores. It was quite clear that if members of the science party got off the ship in an effort to fly home, they might not be able to fly home. So that all of the US science party made the decision, instead of flying home in one day, they made a 14-day trip back across the ocean on the Endeavour at its flat out speed of 8 knots because they were basically afraid of being stuck in the Azores without a flight and without a hotel or anything. The first activities that will resume are those that are really time sensitive. And IOS, for example, the Integrated Ocean Observation System with buoys in the Northwest and gliders that need to be serviced and returned is likely going to be the first time we resume operations on those ships. Those trips to work on offshore installations normally carry science parties aboard as well, and they do science in the area, but it's likely this first time out, it will only be operating crew on board and the technicians to bring the equipment back. So no science will take place. In the second level of getting the fleet ready together again, it's likely we'll use the telepresence ability that we pioneered at the Interspace Center at URI. And the vessels will go to sea on much of their normal cruise track, but the scientific party will remain ashore and conduct all of their work through telepresence at one of our shore-based facilities. What this means to principal investigators and students is that cruises are being postponed at least for a year. And whether or not somebody gets to the back of the line or the front of the line is an open question we haven't resolved yet.
Thank you, Dennis. Very incredibly informative, great layout. Next, we can talk to somebody from the IUS network. Gerhard Kuska, can you unmute yourself and give us the lay of the land?
So we fund as one of the regions, as the Mid-Atlantic region, one of the 11 IUS regions. And I know that Jennifer's here from Socorro too, I see. We fund about 15 to 20 folks in about 10 to 15 organizations. And we've evolved from when we started thinking about this in mid-March, going, oh, wow, something's going to happen. Actually, about March 6th, 7th, we said, maybe we should start preparing. And we set ourselves up to be able to engage a little bit more with our folks. Knowing we weren't going to be able to travel, we wanted to prepare, okay, what happens if? So we did a lot of what if scenarios. We're trying to come up with ways to be able to service the equipment. So we've gotten special permission in each one of we've had our folks approach, their entities, their institutions, assuming state law allows it. Whether you're essential or not depends on your state's definition. In some places like at Rutgers, for our guys, we've got permission for one HF radar tech and one glider operator, one glider tech to go into the lab as essential, so that we can take care of stuff if we need to. We've gotten permission to go out in Virginia to go service a radar that stopped communicating, and suppliers are closed. So Seabird Scientific and Teledyne Web, haven't set some of our gliders back, so our April deployments are going to be delayed, and we're seeing if our hurricane deployments, in May and June can go forward. But, part of the things we need to do is figure out how we can, in the future, plan for, duplicate. I mean, we're still building our network, right? So we've got gaps to fill. We don't have enough gliders. We have, we're developing requests. We're trying to build our fleet so that we can provide for the hurricane, intensity forecasts, that data, give a better ocean picture, make sure that our data keeps flowing to the Coast Guard for search and rescue, all those sorts of things. The idea is we want to keep that going. And to the extent we can't, we're letting folks know that that's the case. So far, we haven't had a lot of breakdowns, but there will be some delays in deployments just because the equipment's not back. And so to that extent, we're planning for the future.
Gerhard, that's great. And finally, Aaliyah from Woods Hole, hello.
Hi, yeah. So just to echo what Gerhard and Dennis have said, I think the majority, except for a few exceptions here, the majority of field work has been canceled or delayed. And what we have heard is that there's a lot of stress from graduate students about planning around these sort of uncertain dates about when will I be able to go out and do my field work, when we'll be able to book cruises. I have a friend who was out abroad when a lot of the travel restrictions came down and has, I guess, for the past almost a month, has been staying on the ship even though the cruise is canceled and not being able to enter any of the countries because he doesn't have a visa. And so I think that's, a lot of these things are major like inconveniences for everyone, but I think for students who, or anyone who is not a citizen of the United States or wherever their home country is, it can easily turn into a nightmare situation. So I think that's one of the big concerns that we have, is making sure everyone is able to come back from travel and is able to get back home before even thinking about, all right, when is the next time that we're going to be able to get back up and running, which is also very important as well.
So my name is Kalina, and I'm a third year in the MIT Hui Joint Program, PhD program. And I do quite a bit of field work. So our lab has experienced a number of different changes, and I've heard from other people with similar experiences. I'd say right now, the most uncertainty is just having everything on hold and not knowing if things will be canceled or delayed, and the preparations that go into the fieldwork as well.
Yeah, thank you. Nice seeing everyone. As Emily said, I'm Lauren Linsmeyer. I work with the majority of the House Science Committee on the Environment Subcommittee, specifically on NOAA issues. We have been, I think, as a first step, working with the agencies in our jurisdiction. So like me working with NOAA on understanding what are the immediate impacts and potential impacts of COVID to the agency. And we've also started to interact more with the external non-federal community to learn how the overall federal science enterprise is being affected. And so we're doing outreach to kind of learn what, in conversations like these where we're trying to have more virtual roundtables with community members to understand what's happening to their grants, to scholarships, to the research, to know what, relief might need to come in a future stimulus package, as well as what are research opportunities right now in terms of understanding this virus and its potential spread and solutions. So we're looking at potential new emerging research opportunities as well.
That is so helpful, Lauren. Thank you. And also thank you for doing all this work on all of our behalf in Congress.
Oh,
I'll be back for some more questions to you. I'm going to pivot to Carolyn because that's actually a really good sort of transition into the other side, is sort of the congressional advocacy from the outside.
So hi everyone, I'm Carolyn Weiss. I run the Oceans Caucus Foundation, which is essentially the oceans program of the ICCF, which is the International Conservation Caucus Foundation. And what we're basically a secretariat for those two caucuses and help educate the members of those caucuses, as well as relevant committee staff on issues kind of that fall under that umbrella. And so I've actually been a little bit more active right now under the ICCF umbrella, the International Conservation Caucus, with engaging our co-chairs and our leadership on the issues of the pandemic as it relates to wet markets and wildlife trade. And so just from that experience, we've had roundtables with Senator Coons and Senator Lindsey Graham. We also just hosted a virtual hearing yesterday on the topic. And And so I'm not going to get too much into detail about those just because we're talking about ocean stuff, but I thought that was relevant in the sense of how we're able to still kind of relate or work with members and their offices. We also worked with them on putting together letters to the president as well as State Department and USAID to kind of highlight the importance of kind of taking advantage of what's happening right now and highlighting the real need and the connection to these spread of diseases. Right now, I think I've reached out a couple times to some offices on some oceans issues, and the feedback I'm getting right now is they are focused on their constituents and their health needs. But I do believe that as we're seeing, and hopefully this trend continues, we're kind of getting to that plateau and starting to see a decrease in cases of COVID. So I think that's very positive. But as everyone understands, the convening and large gatherings and those types of social things that we're used to are not going to go back to normal very soon. And I think there's going to be a real appetite from the Hill staff and even members on kind of focusing on some of the issues that were in their portfolio prior to all this, to COVID issues. And I think there's a big opportunity to discuss and start talking about the blue economy and how, our economy has taken a huge hit, and there's a lot of rebuilding that's going to need to happen. And it's an opportunity to kind of integrate some of these blue economy ideas, and that definitely includes ocean science and tech and observation, and kind of and making sure that the Hill is educated on ways that we can incorporate those ideas into a future stimulus package. I know there's a ton of opportunities to do that within NOAA. But then also just offering ideas and talking about how the fishing industry, how the money that was just in the recent package, what they're going to do with that money, and how the fishing industry has changed. So yeah, there's definitely opportunities, and it's a weird time.
I think I love that you highlighted sort of that we're all sort of struggling to know how to talk about these things right now.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes you reach out to people and they want to talk about it, and sometimes they're like, how could you talk about anything else?
I got that response from a couple of people, and it's I don't know. Yeah, it's a very real problem we're facing, and you do want to be sensitive to what these offices and their constituents are going through. But at the same time, we don't want to take a step back. We don't want to start making exceptions for labor standards or fishing regulations or observers or whatever all these things we have in place or that we've been working on up until that time or up until COVID. They can't just take step backwards. And I'm just worried that in desperation there's going to be some steps back in some of the areas that we've recently gained some traction.
Yeah, I think a lot of us share your worry. I know a lot of the committees and staff on the Hill are thinking about, not only, of course, the impacts, but also what a stimulus package would look like and how we're going to get our economy going and protect jobs, particularly in like coastal resilience and ocean science, and making sure that these aspects of our economy don't go away because they serve all of us.
So the Science Committee is looking at both short and long-term impacts and potential mitigation efforts. That is not to say we know exactly how what the next stimulus package and packages will look like yet. Congress has passed 3 now, and the thought was that this 4th one, whenever it's upcoming, will get more into infrastructure, which could include science infrastructure and hopefully potentially equipment and like IUS buoys and other equipment that need servicing. However, it's looking like maybe it won't be quite as infrastructure focused. So, but that's to say, this is an important time to just keep these conversations going and continuing to learn about the short and long-term needs, so that when we can act on them, we have the information to inform this. And so really the question is, what will science even look like? What will research look like when we come back? And we just appreciate hearing, being in touch with folks on what the priorities are, what the needs are now and in the slightly longer term. This is a time when ocean issues and other environmental issues can be deprioritized, and yet they're so central to human health and economic health. And so wherever we can make those cases for why having a strong ocean research enterprise is important to the economy and stimulating economic activity, those will be really, this is the time to be making those cases. So even how we talk about ocean policy, I think, is going to have to change. But I know the Science Committee I personally am working on ocean bills right now, or who knows when we'll be able to introduce and pass these things. But given that Congress's priority has to remain the economic relief in the meantime, but whenever Congress is able to return to somewhat normal business, there's a backlog of really important bills.
I think that's a really good point, and that sort of leads into first one. I really want to thank Carolyn and Lauren for the hard work you're doing on behalf of ocean science and ocean conservation. So thank you. And